Yeah. The only thing is I can only see your forehead.
Well, I'll get it straightened out. You want the real me or you want my picture? Or you
The
want the
real
real me?
McCoy.
Do you want that?
That's these days life
Oh, there's so much
as
light.
represented by pictures.
There's too much light behind me. There,
There's much better than that's good.
that's
That's
better,
good.
right? I can turn it sideways. Yeah. Okay.
Beautiful. Hey, do you notice my shirt and hat match?
Hold on. Just a minute. I gotta turn off the phone. Okay. Yes, I notice. You
This
have
is a yeah,
the
this is a an event that a pop star named Usher holds where they do roller skating at the Palladium in LA, which is
yeah,
um
I know who Usher is.
yeah. Anyway, I roller skating. Do you remember how beautiful that was? Roller skating and
Betty
dancing at
and
the same time.
Betty and I roller skated into our 60s.
Oh,
Betty used to do uh roller skating in contests or something, whatever group things. I
oh
don't
my gosh, that's the
back
best.
in Colorado when she was kids, and I used to roller skate, and I went to two wheels, and when you oh yeah, when you were in college. When I took on roller skating. We roller skated all around Boston. I used
Rollerblading took over for roller
rollerblading,
skating.
yeah. I started with four wheels. I ended up with two wheels, and we used to do all kinds of gymnastic stuff on the Esplanade, right in the
Esplanade,
Esplanade.
yeah.
Yeah,
You
we'd go
had the
down.
music to it, and God,
No, well,
like the peak.
we didn't have music, but we would meet up with a group of college kids, and they'd be doing all kinds of tricks on the steps and you know sliding down the railing. And I didn't do that. I just roller skated.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Let's talk about this debate, and I
how'd you
want to
like
talk
it?
about it. I was thoroughly relieved and impressed, and I thought Kamala performed with poise and composure and um, command.
I do too. I did too, and I don't know. My concern is that her numbers didn't go up where I thought her numbers should have gone up.
I,
Even from the convention.
yes, and I think that in some ways my takeaway is that Trump spoke over the moderators 5 times to Kamala's zero. She tried once, and the moderator shut her down. And to me, the optics of that worry me because the people who are low information know enough to know that the world is being run by autocrats, and
Mhm.
that's the language of autocrats.
Yep. And I agree with you there. But reality is that uh, the most influential poll that I've seen is by the most respected person who does these polls. And he has a 13-point scenario that he goes through.
Oh yeah,
And yeah, and he says, hands down, she's going to win it. And he's not talking about popular vote because all of us know she's going to win popular vote by 9 million. So it's the question of what happens in 7 states. And are we making a difference? Could you believe that Alex Rodriguez would be voting for the same presidential candidate that Dick Cheney and Taylor Swift are voting for?
that Taylor Swift thing is, it's amazing. I was just about to go into how there's this thing about males and especially sort of young mid-age males and their you know kind of disaffected, feeling left behind, left out.
Mm-hmm.
But when I saw Kamala sort of react and in her prosecutorial sort of body language respond to the things Trump was saying and the language she used about moving beyond this exhausting, belittling and character assassination and stuff. It felt like she probably got through to some suburban white women, educated, college educated women. I just hope that that language of the autocrat is, and this sort of blunt power posture.
Well, I think, Paul, what we have to look forward to is he losing votes? And the answer to that right now is no. His
Yeah.
supporters are not dropping out. If they've drunk the Kool-Aid, they're not dropping out. They're going to stay with the modern day Jim Jones, you know, and they're in Grenada and they're drinking the juice and they'll do whatever the leader says. But the question is she getting people on
Motivating,
board? And well, I think her leader,
mobilizing.
yeah, all her people are motivated, but again, those are the people that have already been, those are people that would have supported Joe Biden, and now
Yeah.
in addition they support her. But I don't know if the numbers are moving. I have to check out tonight and tomorrow and wait to see what new numbers come in. But I'm optimistic. I'm not overwhelmed yet. I'm optimistic.
Seems
And
like seems like unregistered young people could really actually make the difference.
well, there's a world out there that even your generation is not aware of.
Yeah.
These newbies. Betty laughed the other day. They asked us to answer a questionnaire as to which generation we were from. And they started with Generation Z and they went back to baby boomers.
Yeah.
Well, we're 12 to 15 years before baby boomers.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
So
about that a lot.
yeah,
We don't exist.
we don't exist in the charts of aging because they assume we're all dead.
Unbelievable.
Hungry, are you? No,
Huh?
I'm hungry, are you?
Yeah,
Well, when you're finished.
already.
Say hi.
Hi, Betty says
Hi,
hi,
Betty.
Paul.
Hi,
He
Betty.
says hi, but
And I wanted to thank you, Alex, for sending that note over to the Supreme Court Justice.
I haven't sent it yet because her person's not there. Her
Oh,
person's
okay.
on vacation.
Okay.
So I have to wait because I don't want anybody else to handle it. I want
Okay,
Renee,
good.
I want Renee to handle it because she's the one that handles the external stuff. If I gave it to
Amazing.
anybody else,
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. Her book, Just Ask, starts with her discussion of her diabetic
yeah.
issues. Then it goes right into asthma, which
Have you read the other ones?
the memoir. My brother
No,
has it
no,
signed
the
up.
other the other kid books.
Well, yeah, but I wanted to just go through these. It goes diabetes, which she has, asthma, which my brother really struggled with, wheelchair, which I have, and then the next one was blindness, which my dad dealt with.
Right.
It was like these are intimate issues that I'm dealing with.
She covered your family.
And she even goes into stuttering, which Joe Biden dealt with.
Yeah, and we have it sitting in the living room. Whenever we have young folk over, we say, read this while I'm going to the bathroom or something. Because it's an easy read, But if you ever go to hear her speak, she does Just Ask as part of her delivering to the crowd. Especially first of all, so you don't speak from a microphone. She puts on a headset or she holds a mic on her hand and she walks around the audience and she goes to kids and she asks kids, what do they know about what she does and, how do they feel about it? And, what have they learned in school about the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court Justice?
There's a school right across the river here that's named after her.
There is, yeah.
A high school.
She's got
a big one.
She's got several schools named after her around the country. And that's one of the sort of harder things for us to do, being friends of Sonia Sotomayor, is to not deal with her as the justice.
Oh, I know exactly what
You
you're
know,
talking about.
so we don't do that. We deal with her as our friend, and we don't
Yeah.
get enough time with her as we used to, because we were her best couple friends for years when she was engaged to Peter, and that's not in the book. But for 10 years, we hung out together, while she went through her journey, starting with the district court through the appeals court until she got to the Supreme Court. She and Peter broke up before the Supreme Court. But, to deal with her on a friendship basis is what we do. We are sworn not to become groupies.
I'm with you, man. I had a guy who was in a role as a deputy to my city councilor, and he was a friend. And he actually got the city councilor to find the money to fix the sidewalks in front of my house when I got injured in a motorcycle accident. And then he ran for city council, and I supported him. But once he became a city councilor, it was very awkward for me. I did not want at all to become a groupie or to use my friendship, and it just got weird. And I understand what you're talking about. And in fact, I sort of like laid off too much, because I had to.
No, you lose your distance, but you know that you're separately important to them. When you go to a session and they see you, you get a different type of hug, you get a different type of attention. But it's not bad for us to think in that framework, because we are the totality of our friendships and our memories. I mean, you're part of me, because
ditto.
Instantly when somebody talks about somebody in a wheelchair, I go to my brother Carlito, Frank Garfunkel, and Paul Bowers.
That's interesting, because I told you that September Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month. And I did want to kind of like talk about the debate and then talk about the spinal cord injury awareness stuff. But we did sort of talk about the debate. And one thing that before we get down to the spinal cord injury stuff, I just want to talk about how what I watched didn't really match the analysis that I watched after. Right. And I'm fascinated by this because I'm very interested in how people make their opinions, because I've watched sports and I've watched analysis of sports. And sometimes when I watch the analysis of sports, I get all I need. I don't even need to watch the game. Now, when people are watching the analysis of politics, that's a little different, because they're choosing which interpretation. They're not basing their opinions on policy or the implementation of policy or political influence. They're basing all of their gut feelings on who they choose and what the people they choose say about those policies and those politicians.
We're all victims of first impression. We're all victims of optics. We're all victims of our prejudices, and we're all victims of our hopes. And Obama caught it on the hopes one, and the audacity of hope. It's audacious to have hope. I mean, a psychiatrist friend of mine once said, I can't believe things happen to me. And he said, I'm trying to get this sentence out. The person saying to the psychiatrist, I can't remember the sentence, but
it'll come to you.
Yeah, something like, why does this happen to me? And the psychiatrist's answer is, why not? I mean, it's
Como no.
como no, and basically he said, the first sign of mental illness is thinking that you deserve something, and
Huh.
we all tend to feel that we deserve something. And reality is, where are you going to get it from? Your mommy might give you something like love, but after that, where are you going to get it from? There's no promise of obtaining a good president. There's no promise of obtaining a good government. There's no promise of getting money and getting rich and having love, etc. That's part of the human condition. It's something that happens or doesn't happen in relationship to who you meet, availability, because if no one runs for president, you don't have a president. So that's availability. And if you don't have availability, you can't get it. And that's why people are starving in the world. It's not because there's not enough food. There's plenty of food in the world. It's availability. How do we get it to the people that are hungry? It's not because we don't have enough energy in the world to run everything. We do. How do you get it without the pipeline? How do you get it without alternate energy? People are afraid that we're going to shut down the oil industry. Take 620,000 tons of fuel to get a rocket ship into space. What's the alternative to fuel to get a rocket ship into space? Solar energy? No. Windmills? No. It's going to be 620 tons of fuel, jet fuel. And they think that those who are EPA people and want to have a clean society are against those 620 tons of fuel. We don't want spaceships, That's ridiculous. What we're for is reasonable development that's consistent with keeping human beings alive on this planet.
Thank you.
And, that's it.
So I'm kind of really going to violate my order because I know you're about to have some lunch with Betty and I don't want to hold you too long, but I'm reading the book about Robert Moses, and he's...
Which one is it?
The Power Broker.
The Power Broker. I read The Power Broker when he wrote it. So that's how look. So you look at the date.
And you grew up in those neighborhoods.
Robert Moses was the most astute, power-consuming politician in the world. I mean, other than
he wasn't a politician. He never got elected to anything.
I know, that's what I mean.
He created everything.
He created
the authorities.
I know, and who else would sit back and say, if I become the chairman of the
construction
board,
coordinator,
the Triborough Bridge, the Triborough Authority. He said, do you realize how much money we can bring in? And there's a depression and nobody else is bringing in money. They're all going to come and kiss my ass. And that's what they had to do. And so he made himself, okay, you want to build another bridge? I have to be chairman of the authority for life. You want to build a tunnel? I want to be chairman of the other.
And the crazy thing is he got it all done.
Right? Well, somewhat ugly. I mean, I don't agree with not too much, but where he decided to do it.
Well, that's I remember driving as a kid.
I mean, why would you
those parkways and being like traumatized?
Why would you want to come into New York on the Holland and Lincoln Tunnel? Obviously the tunnel should be built, 20 miles down from New Jersey and cut across the river there in an angle to Staten Island, and then cut across from Staten Island to Brooklyn, and cut across from Brooklyn, the Battery Tunnel into New York. That remember, Paul, I was the first Loeb Fellow in environmental design. That's one reason I read the Moses book at Harvard. And in being so, I sat in classes where these things were discussing. What, well, it would have cost too much then. The digging to dig a tunnel now, you just get this big machine and you dig it down to the depth you need to dig it. And when you have granite foundation, you know, the truck just goes forward and the wheel spins and you get the tunnel and it spits the dirt out behind you. And there's trucks that are picking that up and getting rid of the dirt and filling in the waterfront of New York. So you have Treblinka, that's where Treblinka came from, from the dirt that they dug out when they built, the Vera Narrows Bridge. And they had to store that dirt somewhere and they put it in, cut off the water, and all of a sudden when I was a kid, 14th Street on the river, all the way down to the end of Manhattan, didn't exist. That was water. If you came on
The same
this
as the
side,
Back Bay in Boston, right?
yeah, you filled it in. But design, when Moses was designing, the pressure for more access to the roads was so great, it had to be done fast. So it's kind of sloppy. I would never design the way into New York City. That's why they can make movies where, lock off the bridges and we'll contain them in Manhattan. Because that's the only way you can get out. You don't take a bridge, you're stuck in Manhattan, but Moses, let me tell you, he was a incredibly smooth deal maker.
Yeah.
You don't want to call him a politician. He didn't have elected office. He was a politician.
No, and it's just amazing to see him and his ruthlessness and his, like vengeance and all that kind of like control. It's a real kind of like, it puts you through it to read the book.
Kind of like a younger Donald Trump, right?
If only Donald Trump had any of the, ability.
Well, he doesn't have, but the difference is Moses had ideas.
Oh my God, and a brain like a friggin' supercomputer.
Right. And Donald Trump doesn't, and that's the difference. But listen, going back to the politics and the debate, and we have to separate our minds from debates. Politics is unlike sports. There was winners and losers at the end, but it's not measured by home runs and base hits and field goals and a goal in soccer. Politics is not measured that way. Politics is measured, as we said earlier, by optics, by first impressions, by your former prejudices, and what you hope for the future. And you put all that together, we all see the elephant differently. I'm holding the tail and I'm saying, I wonder what this is. You're holding the trunk and you're saying, oh, I wonder what this is. We touch the elephant differently, every human being. And that's why I say we're all individuals and don't ever expect anyone in the world to have the same outcome or belief or hopes that you have, because we're all different. I mean, there's 318 billion of us in the planet. I would be insulting you if I said you're one of the kind. You know why? That would mean there'd be 8,000 of Paul Bowers in the world. You don't want to be one of a kind.
Yeah, no, I mean, so all right, well, since I gotcha, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, since it's Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month, you have a very interesting perspective as a family member of someone with a spinal cord injury, but not just that, someone whose family member was involved in the early organization of spinal cord injury advocacy. What were the things that your brother Hector was?
It was my brother Carlito.
I'm sorry. Your brother Carlito was able to leverage to make. It was the Eastern Paralyzed Veterans of America. Is that right?
Yep. He heard about the Paralyzed Veterans of America and decided that, they were too thin. And his boys, his hood was New York City. And there were tons of people from, like the disproportion in the popular vote. There are tons of people from New York City and tons of people from LA. And he decided that he wanted to hang out with his bros and, the band of brothers. And they wanted to put together the Eastern Paralyzed Veterans of America, a wing. So they went to national and they got approval, and he was part. And he always says, I didn't do it on my own. And he said, you can get a film about him. It's called Profile in Valor.
Huh.
And you have to go to Paralyzed Veterans of America or Eastern Paralyzed Veterans of America and ask them to give you a copy. And
Oh,
I have
wow.
a copy. I have a copy.
That's what our
Before-
organization's called, United Spinal Association.
Yeah. And
Can you move your camera just a little so that you're in the middle?
I can't get that far over. I don't know.
Maybe you just turn your computer a
Okay,
little bit. There you
try
go.
that. There you go.
Great. Yep.
So in any case, he started it, and he became well known because he was the right man at the right time. The civil rights movement was in full-fledged, and my brother, you've seen pictures of my brother, he's black. And as we all are, except I don't show it in my pigmentation, because my mother's black and was black. And Carlito shows it in his pigmentation. And so they had it. Brooklyn, I was going to say articulate. I don't know if those of us from Brooklyn ever become articulate. But, he had the Brooklyn delivery. He was a tough guy. I mean, he was tough before he went to the Korean War. As you know, he got wounded in the Korean War and came home as 18 years old in a wheelchair, 96 pounds. I was 13 years old. I carried him up and down the steps at 13. 96 pounds was easy for me. He wouldn't let anybody else take him up and down the steps except me because my older brother had dropped him twice.
Oh, boy.
And so I learned early on how to deal with the warmth of a spinal cord injured person and the assholeism of the spinal cord injured person. I understand that you can't walk around saying, oh, my poor brother, he's injured. Bullshit. Come on. He could be just as much as an asshole as when he wasn't spinal cord injured. And people who deal with people with spinal cord injuries have to know that you're dealing with a well-rounded human being. You're not dealing with an it. Poor Paul Bowers, he's in the wheelchair. Come on, you're dealing with the totality of the person. And let me tell you, Paul, I'm learning a little more as I get older because I can't stand up for long periods of time. So I went to a political affair on Saturday and I had to sit. And I'm used to, holding the cocktail and walking around and tapping people on their shoulders and telling stories. I had to sit. People had to come for me. And the only people I could talk to were people that sat on my right and on my left. People who standing up there, they don't want to talk to you. You know that. They sort of get disinterested, So that's been a new lesson for me as I age,
That's where I think a lot of people in wheelchairs have a unique insight into the issues that everybody's going to be dealing with in a lot of ways.
Right. As Betty wrote once in a report when she was, and I went and testified too, against Federal Aviation Administration rules about, kids under 16 can't sit in the emergency exit of a plane, and people who are, physically injured or wheelchair bound. And Betty wrote I loved it because I stole it from her. She wrote, what makes these people think that a 500-ton machine hitting the runway and bursting into flames is going to have the well-bodied person sitting in that chair be well-bodied 2 minutes after it hits? That person's not going to be able to move either, you know? And so it was an argument we made, arguing for better rights for those people who we called disabled at the time, uh, in terms of aviation and airline flights. Dealing with people, you've been dealt with because you had your injury. Dealing with my brother became dealing with my brother. The only difference was I carried him up and down the steps. And I had, back then they had the ducks. They had the urine ducts strapped to their leg. And then I would have to take him to the sewer and we'd empty that. And boy, was that a horrible smell.
Infected, obviously, always.
Yeah.
So did he go around a lot? Did he spend a lot of time at home, or did he?
Oh yeah, his high school sweetheart waited for him, and she went through the 4 years of his rehab, and then they got married, and he was reluctant because he was gonna, she'd have to care. I don't want nobody, He came home with the PTSD, that everybody comes home from war with, and he had to mitigate that with his injury. And he was an angry man, but he got through that pretty quickly and became jovial probably 2 years into his rehab, which is really when I got to have to deal with him. So I got the sunny side of the street. My mother didn't, she went to the hospital and to the Veterans Administration while he was still in a bed, and she had to deal with all that. I didn't have to deal with that. I was 11 years old when that happened, and 13 years old when I started giving him some care. And but he quickly jumped into, I'm not going to allow this society to stop me from being mobile. And the first thing he said was, y'all don't realize that we get a better benefit than the Second World War veterans, because our benefit is paid through the United Nations too. While America pays into it to the UN, gets it back. And the United Nations standing and stand-ins are better than the GI Bill of Rights, much better. For instance, United Nations standing, you get a new car every 3 years and they teach you to hand drive. They put it into hand driving, And United Nations standard, they make sure that the car you get is, in terms of your use, either you got the lift or you were able to throw the wheelchair in the back seat.
Which one did he do?
He threw it in the back seat. He did a 4-door. Okay. He'd do the 4-door. What he would do is get in the car from the wheelchair, okay? And then he'd fold it in there, and then he'd open the back door, and he'd take, I forgot how he did it, but he'd get the wheelchair in the car, and it would be sitting in the back seat. And he'd get it, he slid. That's right. He got the wheelchair.
A lot of people pull it over themselves.
No, he got the wheel. He would leave it there, back his car up, put it on the passenger side, and then pull it in. He slide over and pull it in from the passenger side.
Oh my God, I never heard of that.
Because the seat would fold forward.
Okay.
And he had no trouble driving. He'd drive all over the place. And then he started, the wheelchair basketball. The boys wanted to do something. So he nationalized that. All of a sudden there were wheelchair basketball teams all over the country. And Paul, they didn't have these new wheelchairs that you see in the Olympics. They didn't have those bents and able to take a concussion. They did it in the old wheelchairs. And they were mean to each other, knocking somebody out, running over them. I used to watch them and I'd sit there, oh, that's terrible. Oh, Carlito, are you okay? And they'd be laughing out there having a ball. And that's, Special Olympics hadn't developed yet. And he was part of the development of Special Olympics. And he got into it with bow and arrow. He did bow and arrow in the Paralympics. Yeah, they didn't call it they didn't call it Paralympics. It started out as first started out as wheelchair Olympics, only for wheelchair. That's before everybody got more liberal and included all the others. He didn't care about the others. He was dealing with wheelchair folk. He didn't care about blind people. If the priest is teaching blind people how to play golf, he's holding up the whole damn golf course. Carlito would yell out, "Why don't you teach them at night?" He wasn't sensitive to other disabilities. He talked about wheelchair. And he then, he was the president when they enlarged all those sports for wheelchair folk, and bow and arrow and rifle, and I don't know whatever he did, but he did bow and arrow and basketball. And he adopted 2 children. Couldn't have children, but he adopted 2. He couldn't have children, and you can. He couldn't have children because his wife couldn't have children.
Okay.
So they adopted 2 girls, and 3 girls it ended up. And they're wonderful. They're all still, no, one of them passed away. And he went on.
Where did he live? And what was his?
He lived in Valley Stream, Long Island, and then later on moved to Dix Hill, Long Island.
Was his house sort of like a single level kind of house?
Oh yeah. He would single level, no basements, none of that. He had a basement in the first house. In Dix Hill, he didn't. He had a swimming pool with a dog walked by. He had a dog, and the dog went on the side of it and caged in and could walk around the pool, and had the place where he could go to the bathroom, etc. And his wife Jeannie and the kids took care of all that business. And he had the pool, and he was in the pool every day he could be. He had the lift chair, that gets you into the water. But before all that, he got involved in the creation. He was on the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Korean War Memorial. So if you ever come down here and you get Tino to take you on a tour, my son, Betty's son Tino, he'd take you on a tour, and you'd go to the Korean Memorial. And he was instrumental in the design of the Korean Memorial. The architect did it, and if you haven't been there, have you been there? The Korean Memorial is 60 statues walking uphill. They represent the 60 countries that were on the Allied side of the Korean War. So the faces are different. Every face is very ethnic. You can see the ethnic background in the faces. And they're all walking up, and they're bronze, so they've turned green, the statues. And on the name on the right-hand side are all the 60 countries. And the boys are walking up to the flag. And on the side coming down, there's a granite wall, just like the Vietnam Memorial, except there's not names on it, there's pictures. Pictures from actual photographs of people who were in Korea, hundreds of pictures.
Wow.
Okay. And as you walk up so you ask the designer, why did you have him walking up to the American flag? And I always get tear jerky when I say this, because they're coming home. So he has them walking up to the American flag. They're coming home. That's what they were. And as you go down and you look at all the pictures, my brother's picture when he was 18 is in the last frame. So you have, it's black granite, so everything's black. Everybody's black in the picture, even though they were white. But his face, I remember when he was 18, that's his face. And I don't know if he got to choose that or that's total accident. I don't know. I never asked him about it. Um, but he's on the memorial. And if you look up Korean Memorial Citizen Advisory Committee, you'll see his name. Uh, so he worked for, and he was responsible for what what mothers take for, you know, they just assume it's always been there for their uh, use for curb cuts. All your handicap parking signs, all that was for legislation that he and the Eastern paralyzed veterans, and all the handicapped folk that got together got Richard Nixon to pass. Nixon passed that first law. And there's a picture of my brother with Nixon handing him a pen from the signing. You
Wow.
know? And he also worked, he was pretty much a Republican, my brother. He worked with the Ronald Reagan administration. He's appointed to several citizen committees, etc. And that led up to the Korean War Memorial, the Forgotten War. And and then he worked for handicap access. I mean, I remember the first time they printed the decal that you hung on your windshield. You know, I remember I said, wow, this is great. We can park anywhere we want. That's what we thought. Well, in those days you could. There was
Yeah.
you could park in the entrance to something, you could park at a fire hydrant, in those days. But he did he's responsible partially for all of that. Not when I say responsible, he worked with people that were responsible to get this done. It took a lot of people. It takes a village. And
Yeah, well, I think your computer audio is starting to get a little bit clippy, so maybe we ought to. That's a nice place for us to stop. I know you got to go eat.
right.
This has been great, and I would love to talk more someday about. I mean, someday soon about.
Save these tapes so you can put them
Oh,
all
I am.
together.
That's what I'm doing. And the stuff about the public works stuff that Moses did, having grown up in that, I would love once you get a chance to reflect on it a little bit and how the vehicles and because here in LA I'm trying to like help the folks who are working on bike lanes, and it's politically not an easy case to make because we're not there yet in terms of the number of people using the bike lane. But obviously, it's a process, and so
Let me
I want to
let me quickly comment on that.
please.
In Denver, they've gone through in the city getting a little too aggressive on bike lanes. Okay. And there's been a pushback by people who have to use their cars,
Yeah,
and
happening here too.
yeah, and so they're sort of like saying, like the wheelchair community, wait a minute, I have to use my car, and you're making it difficult for me to use my car. Let's find a middle ground. In front of my sister-in-law's house, they put the back lanes in, and then the cars park in the inside. Well, that
Yeah,
takes a whole lane, and she can't. She almost every time she turns into her garage, it's dangerous because the cars are coming down fast
yeah,
because they see the bike lanes there. So they're dealing with that. But I've looked in the Denver development. Bike lanes, it's not. It's like all the the change we want to make in the society we live in. We somehow take an attitude that there's an adversarial relationship with somebody.
yep,
People who are well of body are not the enemy of people who are not. You know, Th- those two populations have to work together. And
yeah,
similarly, in politics, you mentioned the white man syndrome in the Browning of America. You didn't say this, but you talked about how men are feeling alienated, and white men tend to be feeling alienated because they see the affirmative action DEI, movement as against them, shrinking the pie, when in fact,
Right.
all of that enlarges the pie, you know?
Right.
And as the pie gets enlarged, everybody benefits,
But there are some people who are masters at manipulating the instincts, those tribal instincts of fear, and it's not as if it's not in our DNA and it's something that's been manipulated by the most highly paid advertising executives since,
but listen to what you just said. There are some people. You realize how few people use some people? Most people would say they're people. We create an invisible they.
Yeah.
It's easy to hate an invisible they. They don't have a body, they're not white, they're not black, they're they, they're them, they're those people, And when you hear people talking using the invisible them, quickly jump in and call them on it. Because
Yeah.
if you're
No,
saying
I know what you mean. It is
Yeah.
a language thing that's very easy to just, because I didn't really want to get into names, and
Yeah.
I often react in that same way when I hear people say these people or whatever, and I think
The Supreme Court. Well, in the Supreme Court, there's votes, and not all of them go the same way. Well, 90% of the time they do, it's 9-0. And then the other 10%, it's 8-1, 7-2, 6-5, and, 6-3 and 5-4, but the majority is the Supreme Court votes the same way. It's only in these small areas that they don't agree. But
I often think that we oftentimes have the same goals and differ on our opinions of how to get to those goals. Not even as if we have different ends
what they say
that we all want.
What they say in Israel is, there's a political expression: you're never going to end this fight between us and the Arabs, And I heard this in 1986 when I first went. And they say, because the last issue to be settled is what way the traffic is going to go on my street. And if you don't approve the way the traffic is going to go on your street, 2 ways, 1 way, with a traffic light, etc., the war will continue until you resolve that issue. And no one is ever going to give in on the traffic on their street, And we tend to think that way on issues, social issues, political issues, economic issues.
Funny you say that, because I'm trying to focus sometimes on the things we take for granted, like the fact that the place where I wrecked my motorcycle is at an intersection that's now got a street light.
Right.
And that was near a fire station that saved my life. This city government, and there's all kinds of things that we don't even see as part of what we're paying our taxes for, and Social Security, etc. But that's great.
We are the greatest country in the world. We're the best organized. We have the strongest military. We have the greatest amount of compassion for each other. But we get some jerks that get into our body politics every once in a while that tell us we're not. They want to divide us. They want us not to be happy with each other, because that makes a certain minority happy with them. And the only way they can control the world is through minority rule. And so they work for minority rule. And this has been done many times in history. And check your history on the Caesars, minority rule. Who had the army standing at the gates of Rome? Those are the people who won. Why did Anthony, jump on the Caesar side afterwards, because he knew he would have status in the army, and he did. And when he had status in the army, he got over a little too ambitious when he got to Egypt, and he thought he could beat the powerful Roman Empire, and he couldn't. You know, and these, when it gets down to an individual world of decision making, think about it, Paul. You're sitting in the White House. You're the president of the United States. Okay. Solve every problem that the world has for me now. Unrestricted. The
By yourself.
Congress is going to go along with you. Everybody's going to go along with me. Give me the answers to every problem. You can't even think of every problem. It's too vast. It's too big. It's too unmanageable. You can only play in a small little playground. And that playground is the war in the Middle East, Soviet Russia versus Ukraine, abortion, the economy. Yeah, you and I can go on and we can do 20 fingers. 20 fingers would be 1% of all the issues you're going to have to deal with. You get a phone call from the mayor of Cincinnati. We need a bridge fixed. What are you calling me for? I'm the president of the United States. People, we make it out to be simple. It's not simple. It's very difficult.
Reductive. That's the word. I've been looking for that word for a while.
Reductive, yeah.
Reductive. Always seductive to be reductive.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, great to talk to you.
Okay, babe. Thanks for the conversation. It's been wonderful, as always. Take it easy and take care of your mom. Make sure you give her a call.
Yes, sir. Will do.
The attention is necessary.
Absolutely.
All right. You're doing it frequently?
Oh, yeah. Every day I call her.
Okay, good. Take it easy. Love you, babe.
Yeah, love you too. All right.